I remember the exact sound the hospital vending machine made the night my life split into two timelines. A hollow metal thud, like something inside had come loose. Maybe it was just the soda can dropping. Maybe it was me. I was 34 years old, sitting alone under fluorescent lights that made everyone look tired and guilty. My phone battery was at 3%. My bank account was worse. And the doctor had just told me my father might not make it through the night. What nobody in that waiting room knew, what even my family didn't know yet, was that 6 years earlier, I had walked away from them and from everything that felt safe to chase a dream that had almost destroyed me. And if I had quit 1 week earlier, I wouldn't have been able to pay for the surgery that was happening behind those double doors. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me tell you who I was before anyone called me successful. I grew up in a 2-bedroom apartment above a noisy auto repair shop. The walls vibrated every time someone tested an engine. The smell of oil lived in our clothes. My father worked there, 14 hours a day, hands always blackened, back permanently bent forward like he was apologizing to the ground. My mother used to say, "Your father doesn't talk about his dreams because he traded them for ours." I didn't understand that sentence until much later. We weren't dramatic people. No shouting, no big speeches. Just quiet sacrifice. Bills paid late. Shoes worn too long. My parents had one rule: get a stable job. Safe. Predictable. Something with a chair and air conditioning. And for a while, I did exactly that. At 27, I had a decent corporate job. Middle management. Good salary. Health insurance. A name badge that opened doors with a beep. My parents were proud. My relatives finally stopped asking when I'd figure my life out. From the outside, it looked like I had made it. From the inside, every morning felt like I was shrinking. I would sit in meetings talking about numbers I didn't care about, watching the clock like a prisoner counting scratches on a wall. I started measuring my life in coffee breaks and weekends. Sunday nights felt like grief. Then one night, something small happened that changed everything. I was working late. Office almost empty. I opened a folder on my computer, not a work file, but a personal one. Inside were sketches, notes, ideas I'd been collecting for years for a business I always said I'd start one day. I stared at that folder for 10 full minutes. Then I closed it. And that scared me more than anything, because I realized I was rehearsing a life I didn't want and calling it responsible. The next week, I told my parents I was quitting. My mother thought I was joking. My father didn't say anything for a long time. He just looked at me like he was trying to calculate something invisible. Finally, he said, "Stability is not the enemy. Uncertainty is." I told him, "Regret is worse." We didn't yell. That almost made it harder. I left that job with savings that looked big on paper and small in real life. I rented a cheap place. Foldable table for a desk. One chair. Secondhand laptop. That was my office. The first 6 months were exciting. I worked 18 hours a day and called it passion. I posted, pitched, emailed, built, failed, adjusted, repeated. I told everyone, "It's slow now, but it's building." Month 8, the savings started bleeding. Month 10, they started hemorrhaging. Friends stopped asking how it was going. My parents stopped asking too, which somehow hurt more. By year 2, I was exhausted. Not physically, existentially. Every rejection email sounded the same. Every "we'll get back to you" meant no. One night, I calculated my remaining money. 43 days. That was it. 43 days before I'd have to crawl back to the same type of job I had escaped. I remember staring at that number like it was a countdown to an execution. That week, my father called. He almost never called during the day. He asked, "Are you eating properly?" I said yes. He asked, "Is the business stable?" I said, "Almost." There was a long silence. Then he said something he had never said before. "If you need to come back, that is not failure." I know he meant love, but all I heard was, "I don't think you can do this." That night, I sat on my floor, back against the bed, lights off. I had 2 tabs open on my laptop. One was a job application. The other was a draft proposal for one last big pitch, a client that could change everything. I hovered between them like my future depended on where my mouse landed. It did. I chose the pitch. For the next 7 days, I worked like a person who had nothing left to lose. I rewrote every line, cut everything that sounded safe, put in the real story, the real vision, the part of me I had been toning down to sound professional. I sent it at 2:17 a.m. Then I waited. 3 days. Nothing. For days. Nothing. Day 5, I got an email. Subject line, "Let's talk." I read it 6 times to make sure it was real. That call turned into a contract. That contract turned into visibility. Visibility turned into more work. Not overnight. Not magically. But enough. Enough to breathe. Enough to not quit. Over the next 4 years, I built something solid. A real company. A team. Clients who respected the work. Money that didn't disappear the moment it arrived. People started calling me lucky. I wanted to show them the 2:17 a.m. email. The 43-day countdown. The nights I ate rice and eggs because budgeting felt like survival training. But success edits your backstory for you. My parents saw the results, not the fear. My father would just nod when neighbors mentioned my work. He never said, "I told you so." He never said I was wrong. He just seemed relieved. Then came the hospital night. Heart attack. Sudden. Severe. I got the call while reviewing a contract worth more than my entire salary from my old job. I left mid-sentence, didn't even close my laptop. In that waiting room, I wasn't a founder or successful or anything impressive. I was just a son who remembered his father's hands, cracked and permanently stained. When the doctor explained the cost, the urgency, the risks, I didn't hesitate. I transferred the money, and I realized something that hit harder than any achievement ever had. If I had chosen the job application tab that night years ago, I wouldn't be sitting there with the power to help. My father survived. Recovery was slow. Weeks later, I was sitting next to his hospital bed while he struggled to sit up. He looked smaller, lighter, human in a way parents never seem when you're young. He said, "I was afraid for you." I said, "I know." He said, "Not because I didn't believe in you, but because I knew how hard life can hit." That sentence closed a gap between us that had been open for years. He had never been against my dream. He had just been trying to protect me from pain he knew too well. The real twist? Reaching the top didn't feel like fireworks. It felt like responsibility. Like now I couldn't afford to become complacent, because I knew what the fall looked like. I had lived on the edge of it. Today, when people ask for advice, they expect some secret strategy. The truth is less glamorous. You will doubt yourself at the exact moment you most need confidence. The people who love you might misunderstand you while still loving you. Progress will look invisible for longer than feels fair. And the moment that changes everything will look small while it's happening. A mouse click, a sent email, a decision not to quit one more time. That's what the top is built on. Not talent alone, not motivation speeches, but the quiet, unphotogenic choice to keep going when no one is watching, and even you aren't sure why you are. I still hear that vending machine sound sometimes in my head. A hollow metal thud. A reminder that life can change in an instant. But the direction of that change is often decided years earlier, in a dark room, with 2 tabs open, and nobody there to clap when you choose the harder one.